This is the preparation for a full veneer alloy restoration of tooth number 1-6. The features of the preparation are a 1 mm reduction occlusally, including the functional cusp, and a 0.5 mm chamfer margin and reduction axially on all surfaces. So we're going to start with the flame-shaped diamond. We're going to establish the line of draw perpendicular to the occlusal plane, and we were going to make proximal slices away from the final position of the margin, and we're going to make use of that triangular shaped gingival embrasure, which gives us adequate space for working. This makes it easier later on when we're going to place the margins around the preparation axially with the round-ended tapered diamond. So now we've completed the mesial slice, and we do this so that we will not touch the adjacent tooth. We place the patient sideways, and we use direct vision, and we just hold the burr in parallel to the line of draw, and we simply cut a slice through the proximal region. We use finger rest, and you could see here that we're actually using the non-dominant hand to guide the burr. So this is a two-handed technique to keep the burr upright and to guide it as we go through interproximally. So there we go, we're cutting through distally now, and we could leave that little sliver of enamel there. And we're just doing this, as I said before, to stay away. Note that you have a large area of space to work with because of the gingival embrasure. Our next step would be to use the round-ended tapered diamond, which has a built-in degree taper of 5 to 6 millimeters. Hold that burr parallel to the line of draw, and we will simply do axial reduction. Again, we're using direct vision. We'll start on the buckle, and we'll use a two-handed technique. We place a pencil mark approximately 1 millimeter above the simulated gingiva, and this will give us preservation of the periodontium if we keep all our margins supragingival. We reduce the axial surfaces of the tooth preparation to about 0.5 millimeters with a chamfer margin, which is about half the depth of the burr. We don't want to go more than half the depth, else we will not create a chamfer margin. We will create a lip. And we do this so that we have conservation of tooth tissue as well as structural integrity. And our chamfer margin is going to give us marginal integrity. So we're using a chamfer margin, which is the best margin for alloy restorations. We're being as conservative as we can be, so we're only reducing 0.5 millimeters axially. And we're staying 1 millimeter above the gingiva, so we have preservation of the periodontium. So we're doing three things. We're conserving tooth tissue, maintaining structural integrity, marginal integrity, and we have preservation of the periodontium. We want to make sure when we're doing the axial reduction that the margin is even all the way around and we don't create any undercuts. And we have to make sure that our burr remains parallel to our line of draw as we go around the tooth. The built-in taper of the burr will actually give us the retention that the preparation needs, which is gained from the axial surfaces and opposing upright walls of about 5 to 6 degrees taper, and that's going to give us sufficient retention. And our little analogy is when you're looking at the prep, you want to be able to let that little man walk all the way around the mountain. And he doesn't fall off, so that your margin must not disappear. It must be clear all the way around. Yeah. When you've completed your margins with the burr, you will probably find it useful to use a gingival margin trimmer and sharpen up and define your margins, and just remove any unsupported enamel prisms that might be present. And here you could see the gingival margin trimmer being used in the distal part of the preparation, and now in the mesial part of the preparation. And you can go all the way around the preparation using a margin trimmer and sharpen up your margins. Now that we have our margins defined, we'll move on to the occlusal reduction. So the upper first molar has 4 cusps. So we'd like to make depth cuts of a little less than 1 millimeter in the depths of the cusps and the triangular ridges. So in the fissures, you'll want to make a 1 millimeter cut, and in the triangular ridges, which is the meaty part of the cusp, you'll also want to make a 1 millimeter depth cut, and then you'll simply join your depth cuts together. This will ensure that you get an even reduction of the interfacing inclines of the occlusal cusps, evenly reduced. So when you're finished, your preparation should actually look like a very small first molar. We do a biplanar reduction, which means that for each cusp, we reduce it in 2 planes. Most of the occlusal reduction focuses on the interfacing inclines of the cusps, but there is an additional plane of reduction, which is the functional cusp, which in a properly oriented upper first molar will be the palatal cusp. So in order to do the reduction, we will reduce the palatal facing incline of the palatal cusps, like so. And that is referred to in most texts as the functional cusp bevel. If you are using a reduction stent, you can easily see the functional cusp bevel. If you look down the buccal surfaces of the teeth, the labial reduction should be fairly parallel to the curvature of the labial surfaces of the adjacent teeth. So here we could see we're looking at the upper 7, and we want that to be parallel to the buccal surface of the upper 6. So we will mimic that reduction visually here, make sure it's parallel. Again, if you're using a reduction stent, it will be easy to pick that up. Then we will check for undercuts. So we check for undercuts by holding the burr against ensuring full contact with the axial surface. Move the burr without changing the orientation to the opposing wall, and make sure there is no gap between the tip of the burr and the opposing wall. And we will check for undercuts. So we will check the buccal wall versus the palatal wall, the mesial wall versus the distal wall, the mesio-buccal line angle versus the distal-palatal line angle, and then the mesio-palatal line angle versus the distal-buccal line angle. And we will make sure that we have no undercuts. If there is an undercut, you simply hold the burr at the orientation that you want it, press the pedal, and just remove the undercut with a feather touch. Once you've checked for undercuts and you're happy that there are none, then you will take a smooth diamond finishing burr, and you will just remove all sharp angles and points around the preparation occlusally and axially, but you stay clear of the margin. So you just smoothen everything up, and then you should be finished with your preparation. Remember, when you look at your preparation, the buccal and palatal cusp tips of your preparation should be in line with the cusp tips of that arch. They should form a fairly straight line. They should be in line. Here we are demonstrating the lack of undercuts. Mesial versus distal, buccal versus palatal, mesio-buccal versus distal-palatal line angle, and then we have distal-buccal versus mesio-palatal. Just making sure that there are no undercuts. And there, distal-palatally, you can see a very small gap between the tip of the burr and the tooth structure, and therefore we're going to remove it by simply holding it at that orientation and just removing the undercut. At this point, it will be a good idea to fit your reduction stance. Make sure that your reduction is adequate, and you should be finished. 0.5 millimeter chamfer margin all the way around, 1 millimeter reduction of the inner facing inclines of the buccal and palatal cusps, and the palatal facing incline of the palatal cusp, which is the functional cusp bevel, 5-degree taper, keeping your walls upright as possible, and 1 millimeter above the gingiva.